What's up, everybody? Welcome to Among the Fence. My name is Aaron. Today we're checking out the new album Imperium Delirium by Shadow of Intent. This is the 5th studio album from the deathcore band. Personally, I didn't really start listening to them until they released their 3rd album, Melancholy, which came out in 2019, which is also the only album I've ever reviewed to get a 10 out of 10 score. Their style of symphonic deathcore is pretty much perfect on that record. It's perfect accent, and they don't really depend on the synth too much. So it's just really beautifully blended into the mix. And not to mention Ben Dur is basically at his peak in that album as well. I could go on about how amazing that record is, and I pretty much do in the review that I have. I'll leave a link for the video for that down in the description below if that's something you want to check out, if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that album and why I did give it a perfect 10 out of 10. They did change their sound a little bit though. It became a little less symphonic in their 2022 LP, Elegy, leaning a little bit more on the deathcore side of things. Not too much, but the songs definitely depend a little bit more on the riffs and the vocals, which is not a bad thing whatsoever. And while I didn't really love it as much as Melancholy, I will say it is one of the most underrated deathcore albums around. People tend to just kind of they just don't pay any attention to it when they're talking about some of the best deathcore albums, especially for that year of 2022. There was a lot of good stuff coming out, and it's never in the conversation, and I feel like it definitely should be. And if anything, I feel like it was kind of foretelling where they were going, especially on this new album, Imperium Delirium, when they released their first single for it, Flying the Black Flag, which demonstrates a very intense raw riff that draws you in, mixed with Ben sounding the best he's ever sounded. I know he's like a fine wine. I know he sounds really good on his past stuff, but within the mix and the production and just his vocal delivery is just fantastic on this. I can't get over how insane he sounded on this single, especially when it released. It just caused a lot of anticipation, and he delivered 100%. Sonically, it sounds like the beginning of an epic journey. It builds into an atmospheric chorus, and it ends on a brutal breakdown and a really great sounding guitar solo, which I'm usually not that big of a fan of, but it sounds really good here. The opening track, Prepare to Die, prepares you even more for this epic journey of the foreboding war that is taking place. It has the same kind of harmonies, but snarly vocals make it feel just a little bit more threatening and a little bit more hostile. The breakdown is theatrical as heck, and it keeps you in suspense, building up to one of the grooviest riffs on this entire record. And then we have Infinity of Horrors, which was another single, and it feels like it could easily find its place on Melancholy. The pre-chorus melody is super colorful, but it's also full of despair, and the chorus declares their hatred for sovereignty. Verse 2 is an absolute headbanger, and honestly, there's a lot to unpack in this track. Every single time I listened to it, I found something new that it just caught my ear. I couldn't stop listening to it. I'd go back and listen again, and there's always something else there. I don't normally care for guitar solos all that much, but it sounds amazing here. It doesn't feel super flashy or out of place or like it was just tacked on there just because you need somebody to shred on the guitar. And the vocals in the outro sound like a demon is literally killing another demon. Mechanical Chaos keeps the same kind of riff and theme going with one of the best drum performances I have heard from this band, at least that I can remember, as one of the nastiest breakdowns that go with it. The squealing from the guitar and the rhythm match up beautifully with the vocals, and also the spoken word section is super creepy. The constant pounding from the rhythm creates a very uncomfortable atmosphere, and believe it or not, it only gets heavier from here with the next song, They Murdered Sleep. The drums go off again, and the synth is fantastic, reminding me again of their older stuff, something that could easily be found on Melancholy. It's incorporated very well. This one is about being bombed at night by the enemy and about having to bury your dead in the morning, and how every single night is a literal nightmare and just full of anxiety. You don't know what you're going to wake up to in the morning, and it's just, yeah, I'm sure that just sounds so terrifying. The outro shows just how hopeless this feeling really is in a very heavy way, and they follow this up with the song The Facets of Propaganda, which has a super stompy riff in the intro and the pre-chorus. The chorus is very powerful, showing how people get lied to, and they just kind of get tricked into believing that war is necessary. And it kind of brainwashes them into thinking that supporting war and thinking that your country going to war is kind of another way of being patriotic in a sense. The female vocalization in the bridge is absolutely beautiful, as is honestly the whole last minute of this song. And then we have Feeding the Meat Grinder featuring Corpse Grinder, which is very appropriate. It's just a straight up death metal song through and through. Both vocalists are so brutal. Honestly, it's kind of hard to tell who's who. When this song first came out as a single, I had no idea, if I'm going to be completely honest. I had no clue who was doing what part. It was very hard because Ben can do any section within the song and sound just like Corpse Grinder, and of course Corpse Grinder, being as brutal as he is, he fits in right along with Ben. So it was very hard. It's kind of like when Ben was featured on the Darko US song Pretenders with Tom Barber. Both of those vocalists are insane, and honestly, if it wasn't for Tom being in verse 1 and Ben being in verse 2, and there's a very big separation between the two, it'd be very hard to tell who was who in that song. It has kind of the similar thing to it, but it just flows. It flows so well. Their vocals just match together perfectly. The riffage is absolutely nonstop, and the quick vocal delivery makes it feel even more relentless till everything drops out. And then Ben's vocals come in like a demon calling from the abyss. And then we have the song Vehement Draconian Vengeance. That's probably my 9th time trying to say that. This one has more of an old school feel to it, but this time in terms of sounding more like the Black Dahlia Murder. The rhythm and the verses are super quick, and the snarling vocals sound so freaking good in the mix, especially when the synth comes in. It completely changes though and becomes a little bit more sinister once we get to verse 2. The tempo slows down quite a bit in the bridge before the guitar solo comes in, and also a piano solo, which again, this band just knows how to incorporate so many different sounds from female vocalization, piano, and synth and stuff like that. And it sounds so good. It doesn't feel like it's just tacked on there just for the sake of doing it to try and be, thinking outside the box. These guys actually know how to fit different instruments and sounds into their song and make it all just come together so nicely. Beholding the Sickness of Civilization has a really cool vocal effect that I wasn't really expecting to hear. They don't normally do that sort of thing on Ben's vocals, and it sounds really cool. The chorus has cleanish vocals accompanying the growls, and it sounds so epic. Again, not really used to hearing clean vocals from this band. A little bit here and there in the past, but you just don't think of them like that. So when you hear it, it just catches your ear and it sounds so epic. The drums really show off what they could do once again, while there's a really sick riff with tons and tons of that juicy guitar tone. It's really hard to pick a favorite song on this album, but I would have to say this track is definitely my favorite. The outro in itself is just enough for it to push itself above the others. Then we have Apocalypse Canvas, which follows it, and it is the obligatory instrumental that they put on every single album. I gotta say, I listened to way too much Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and Eric Johnson and bands like that mostly do instrumental stuff to really appreciate instrumental songs, and no matter what the context or the band. But I gotta say that Show Out of Intent always manages to impress me. I find that their instrumentals add to the music and to the themes of the record instead of feeling like they're out of place or they're taking away from the story. A lot of times I feel like if you skip the instrumental, you don't really miss out on anything. But with Shadow of Intent, I feel like you kind of do. You miss out on the journey that they're bringing you on, and the instrumental is definitely there. I can't remember the name of the instrumental in Melancholy. It's like 13 minutes long, and when you see that, it's honestly the first time I saw that it was 13 minutes, it got a little bit of an eye roll for me. But honestly, if you skip it, you miss out on so much. And I feel like it's the same in this album. And it creates a lot of atmosphere as it goes into the next song, No Matter the Cost, which is based on the Russian-Ukraine war. The intro has a phone conversation between a Russian soldier and his wife, and it there's some evidence in there of the war crimes committed by the Russians. And the lyrics in this are fantastic. They don't hold back. They portray a leader who's willing to sacrifice everything to get his way. Even when he's not really winning anymore, he's still we're just going to push forward because we started this war and we can't admit that we were wrong, and maybe we shouldn't be doing this anymore. We're just gonna keep going with it. And mixed with the vocals and the synth, it is honestly, it's pretty badass. This song in itself just taking it out of the context of this leader who's willing to do no matter what, I actually think it's pretty cool. But if you add the context in there, it's pretty sad, honestly. It's also, I gotta say, it's up there as one of my favorites. Especially, I don't know anybody who is, but I'm not a huge fan of this war, and it's just it's really a sad thing to see, and it's really cool to see a band like that. I know there's a lot of bands out there, but Shadow of Intent really drive home just how awful this whole situation really is. And then it brings us to the closing track on this album, which is also the title track, Imperium Delirium. It has a very theatrical opening with female vocalization. It makes you wonder what direction they're going to go in with this song. And I believe that it continues the story of No Matter What Cost. It starts off pretty stompy, but evolves into a groovy riff. The blast beats in verse 2 are so freaking good with the riff. They're so fast, so aggressive. The bridge and solo has more cleanish kind of vocals. Very nice touch popping up once again. I enjoyed that they did that. And again, every time you hear it, it's just so, you're just so unexpected. It catches you off guard every time. Ben's growls are just so low and guttural. It makes it sound even more epic. And it builds up to one of the heaviest breakdowns on this record, encompassing all of the sounds that we have heard on this album so far, leading to them driving home the theme of this album. I feel like it's a fantastic closing track. I gotta say, this is a beautiful LP. It's everything that I wanted. They didn't go too hard with the synth. Once again, I enjoyed it, letting the guitars create a little bit more of the atmosphere. My only issue with this album, and the reason why I don't think it beats Melancholy for me, is because the riffs and the overall songwriting kind of blend together just a little bit too much. So it is a little hard to tell if you're listening to the same song. It can kind of sound like the same thing over and over again with majority of the songs. And I think that's because, it's deathcore. There's not a whole lot of variation in there, especially if they lean a little bit more into it. It was also my problem with Whitechapel's last album as well. It's fantastic, but some of the songs do kind of start to sound exactly the same. But again, the themes follow. It's still fantastic. Well, Melancholy to me sounds better, and you can definitely hear the separation there from track to track. Each song off of Melancholy sounds completely different. That's my argument for it. But at the same time, this is just such a great album. This is a very strong album of the year contender. I have to give Imperium Delirium by Shadow of Intent a 9.3 out of 10. But I want to know what you guys think. I have a feeling that most of you are probably going to agree with me. This is probably going to be one of the best albums we get all year, which is saying something. We're only halfway through the year, so there's still plenty of time for something else to pop up, but it's going to be close on if it could beat it or not. But leave a comment below letting me know what you thought of Imperium Delirium. Let me know what you rate it, what your favorite song is. Also, if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to give it a like. It helps out so much with YouTube's algorithm. You have no idea how much it helps out with my channel. It does so much. For every like you give it, it basically gives me like 10 points in the YouTube algorithm of putting this video in front of somebody else who tends to like the same kind of music and stuff you do. Otherwise, it's going to assume that people don't really like it, that enjoy the same sort of thing that you do. So yeah, it helps out a lot in that sense. Also, if you want to help support me further than that, you don't want to miss out on future reviews or New Music Fridays, don't forget to give my channel a subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe and give it a subscribe and ring the bell icon. Just thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to listen to me sit here and talk about music. I hope you have a good rest of your day or night whenever you happen to be watching this, and I will talk to you guys next time.